Yo, what is good, MMA gang? I'm back here today again with another video, and today I'm breaking down this UFC Fight Night Shanghai featuring Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Song Yadong. So far, we've been on a good streak of fight nights recently with the UFC. They've been giving us some decent fight nights, not just slapping anybody on there. Or really, it's just these guys that are hungry on these, I don't know, new contracts, these debutants that are just fighting for their lives or something, man. They've really been pulling it together when it comes to these fight nights and giving us some entertainment. So I don't know. I'm still keeping my eye out because, you can never give the UFC too much props and they, start getting lazy. But yeah, we've been getting some good product recently. And yeah, just wanted to break down this card, give my thoughts. A lot of new people, some familiar faces, some decent names. So I think it's a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it, breaking this card down. So first fight of the night, we're going to have Ming Ding taking on Cam Nelson, and both of these guys are fairly fresh to the UFC. I know this is Cam's debut. When I look at Nelson's fighting style, I watched a little bit of his highlights, and he seems like a marauder on the feet, pretty wild, who will kind of work his way into grappling and submissions if he's able to, get his opponents down. And Ding, he seems like the more overall polished MMA fighter. I feel like his game, he has 35 wins, damn near 45 fights. So he's had hella more fights than, he's taking more losses than Nelson even has fights. So, he has way more experience on his side. And yeah, just has the overall more polished game, in my opinion. Just based off looking at these two, I couldn't really tell who I wanted to take a little bit. Because Nelson seems kind of promising, one of those upcoming Canadian prospects. Feels like they low-key have a couple on the rise that I could get behind. But overall, if they're watching their tape, I do got to say Ding just looks a little more impressive to me. He's been doing it longer. So I think I'm going to take bro to go ahead and get a decision in this one. And then next, we're going to have Jingnan Zhang taking on Julia Pilastri. Now, with Zhang, I know she's coming off. She was a former champ, I believe, at strawweight over at One Championship. And then they gave her Angela Hill in her debut. And man, Angela Hill is just one of the craftiest women. I love watching Shorty fight. She's able to just turn around some of these up-and-comers who are trying to make their name in the UFC. And, just give them a tough fight because she can just fight all around. And, yeah, she gave Jingnan, a tough fight in her debut trying to make her way onto the scene. And just off watching some of Julia's tape, I feel like she is somebody who thrives in brawls when the fight starts to get a little more scrappy. That's wherever she loves to live in. As well, she has a good high kick that, she can just get up, like, close in pocket range. Boxing range, she can just get that motherfucker up and, really land a good high kick on people. So, yeah, when I look at Zhang, she's not the most polished, crispiest striker, but she has that heavy pressure that she'll just unleash big hooks on you. So, she also basically thrives in, brawls. And then she also has some pretty decent body kicks as well that they're pretty snappy. She'll punish you with to the body, start shutting you down that way. So, yeah, overall, both of these girls like to brawl. So, it could turn up into a pretty good scrap. I think what's going to lean me towards Zhang is just the home crowd advantage. This is her second fight in the UFC, so she's trying to get a dub, to stick around. So, yeah, in this one, I am going to go Zhang by a decision. I just think on the feet, she'll overall be able to, get the better of the exchanges against Julia. So, yeah, let's lock that in. And then next up, we're going to have Lawrence Liu taking on Hector Santiago. And when I'm looking through both of these guys, I know with Lawrence, he trains at a city kickboxing, with all those good boys, all that good team that we know all about, the Oldbergs and the Navajo Sterlings and all of them. And he has like a pressure style, he doesn't have as crispy kickboxing as, those other guys. But he has a nice pressure style that I feel like he works into his grappling. I think he seems like more of a grappler to me off what I've seen. And then when I was looking at some of Hector's tape, it seems like he has really powerful hooks. He's throwing to put your lights out. And he kind of just has that general marauding Brazilian style that you'll see a lot of guys have where they're just jacked and, they're just swinging big hooks. Off of what I was able to, gather from both of them, I think I am going to go Lawrence to just be a more composed martial artist once we get in there, be able to evade the big hooks from Hector. And maybe get him down and just wear him down that way. So I think I'm going to go Liu by decision. And then next up, we have a pretty decent fight, honestly, with Jack Jenkins taking on Sean Woodson. That should end up a pretty good scrap. With Sean Woodson returning after like over a year since he got finished by Dan Ige, which was a little controversial, but, he was getting pieced up in the boxing. The alien man himself, was kind of starting to will a little bit and the ref ends up calling it, but he's finally returning. And then we got Jenkins who, he seems like he's not the fastest or the, the craziest athlete compared to a lot of guys he fights, but he has just really good fundamentals in the boxing. He has sharp low kicks. That really takes me back to that Jamal Emmers fight where he just broke him down with calf kicks. And, you could just tell he was breaking his base very well. Kind of gives me a similar stylistic matchup to this Woodson one. And then Jack Jenkins, he also has a strong jab, he'll pop you in the mouth with the jab, and good body punches. I just remember him folding opponents like Gilbert Burns' little bro, or I'm not sure if he's older or younger, but yeah, Gilbert Burns' bro, he just folded him to body punches. So he has, good attacks to the body for sure. As you can see, at least in the odds, Woodson is a -150. So he's for sure, a decent favorite going into this one. And he has a 7-inch height advantage, 10 inches in reach. So, he's going to be the bigger guy in there. But I just feel like Jack Jenkins, when he gets into the pocket, is throwing shots to the body and breaking down Woodson with the calf kick. I feel like he has just the style to get it done and to really defeat Woodson. I do think it could be close because Woodson, can piece him out from the outside and stay safe. But something's telling me with this Australian recent run of guys that are just looking really good, Jack Jenkins will have enough to get this one done, and I think it will end up being like a split decision, low-key. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go Jack Jenkins by decision. And then next up, we're going to have Long Zhao taking on Francesco Nuzzi. And yeah, when I'm looking into this matchup, this fight, I was realizing got put together about a little bit over a week ago. So literally both of these guys found out they were going to be on this card pretty recently. And I think, with Long, they had already kind of told him like, yo, you might fight on this card, home crowd advantage and shit. But they just called up Francesco up short notice, to just get his foot in the door in the UFC. He's under the same management as Nuzzi, as guys like Woodson, Ray Saruya, and Perez were on this card. So it makes sense, they called up one of their guys to get in there and, just get a chance to scrap and he show what he's worth. But yeah, overall, looking through their games, watching some of their tape, I'm going to have to go Long in this one. I just feel like, he has the more experienced game. He's fought, the higher level of comp. I feel like he has the better submission game is where I was seeing Nuzzi might lack in. I think he got submitted maybe back in the day a few times. I could see Long maybe pulling off an arm bar, some type of submission like that. So yeah, go ahead and give me like a round 2 submission for Long in this one. And then next up, we're going to have Ray Saruya taking on Kevin Borjas. And man, with this one, I'm pretty big on Ray Saruya. He looks like a hell of a promising prospect. His only loss in the UFC comes to Josh Van, the champ. So, that already tells you he's only losing to GOATs on his way up. And yeah, he is excellent wrestling and grappling. Yeah, for sure in those departments, if you can't defend him well or you can't just hang with him, he's going to dominate you there. And when I look at Borjas, he's coming off of snatching Andre Lima's undefeated record recently and turns around, both of them do, on, pretty quick notice to get another fighting, get some more ground in. But yeah, when I look at Borjas' record, he's nothing crazy. For some reason, the dumbass AI threw him in the rankings off that win, which was crazy. But yeah, he's lost to, guys with good ground games who can throw their hands as well, have good hands type of archetype. I'm kind of looking at like Imanov and as well as Alessandro Acosta. Those two guys, were able to overall, were better than him in the grappling and just, able to piece him up on the feet. So yeah, for sure, I'm going to go with Ray Saruya in this one. I think kind of like Imanov and also Alessandro, you'll be able to submit Borjas in round 2. So yeah, go ahead and give me that submission round 2 finish. And then next up, we got Andre Lima taking on Namsari Batbayar. And yeah, Lima's bouncing back of trying to get some respect back on his name after losing his O in his last fight against Borjas. And yeah, in this one, one thing I was looking at is before the Borjas fight, Lima had 3 different canceled bouts. I think only one of them was his fault that he had to pull out of. So maybe that could have affected the Borjas fight. He probably wanted to stay more active, but, just kept having to jump through a lot of hurdles. And he bounces back quick, wanting to get that momentum back after taking that loss. When I look at Namsari, I forgot if it was Namsari or Namsari, I was watching some of his highlights, and all his wins come by finish, 5 KOs, 5 subs. So yeah, he's for sure, an entertaining style of fighter. But I think in this fight, the Andre Lima's just higher experience. And yeah, the fact that, he's had a few maybe 5 or so fights in the UFC now will be, good enough to not get slept and not get finished by Namsari. And, he'll be able to cruise to a decision overall and maybe not look the most impressive, but, be able to win out the rounds and get this one done. So yeah, go ahead and give me Andre Lima. And then the next side, we're going to have Bilal Hasan taking on Nelson Rojas. And yeah, for sure, Bilal is a star in the making if you haven't really heard of his name. He's taking this fight a little over maybe 2 weeks after he just got a knockout in Dana White Contender Series, where he had a lot of hype going into that fight and was able to win in round 1 spectacular fashion. And then when I'm looking at Rojas' side, I think this is his debut. He's fighting out of Peru and stuff. For the UFC, they just call him up on 2 weeks' notice to, get a fight for their prospect and let him in the door. But when I look through his record, he has 7 KOs, 2 decisions as far as his wins. So mostly, he's KOing dudes. And he went 1-1 with Borjas. I was looking through on, I want to say, in his amateur record when they were, both coming up. They ended up going 1-1 against each other. So that's pretty cool. They met on the Peruvian scene and now they're both in the UFC. But yeah, I remember a few weeks back, I was watching my dog, Don Smoke MMA. I'll try to link to the video down below where he did an interview with Bilal maybe, a month or so back. And I remember Bilal was saying, yeah, he could beat Josh Van now. He was just kind of talking out of his ass, talking crazy. I was like, man, who the fuck is this kid? Talking crazy. He's not even in the UFC yet. And I think a little bit after watching that video, I ended up watching some of his highlights. And I was like, oh, nah, yeah, he might be the truth. The way he's sleeping dudes at 125 is crazy. I don't know why it feels like we're getting a good few guys at flyweight recently that just have hella KOs or finishes on the record. We don't usually see that. Kind of like both of these gentlemen. But yeah, when I was looking at Bilal, I was like, man, he's saying he'll sleep Josh Van right now? Man, hell nah.
Oh, hell no! That's hell no! Whoa!
But yeah, looking through his stuff, I was like, nah, he's the truth. And then, leading up to the Contender Series fight, there was a lot of hype around his name. And, he gets it done in crazy fashion. So yeah, bro is looking to, really make a push and really be one of the next biggest stars for that flyweight division. So I'm going to be interested to see how his career plays out. But yeah, this is one of those where somebody's O has got to go. Two prolific finishers, but I'm for sure going Bilal Hasan in this one. He has those powerful hands. He's a crazy finisher, and yeah, he just seems to be really good for that division. He's really born for the moment. I'm going to go round 2 KO in this one. He's coming off of a round 1 KO. Maybe he wants to, ease into this fight a little bit. So I'm going to go Bilal round 2 KO. And then next up, we're going to have Levy Rodriguez Jr. taking on C. Lu. When I'm looking at this fight, Levy returns, about a month later after he lost his O, actually. Not too long ago, I believe it was on the Bilal and Bonfim card. Where, he was, undefeated going into that one. He ends up losing to Felipe Franco in a fight, where he got mostly dominated. Was pretty crazy to watch, but I think he was just overall smaller than Franco, so he couldn't get his offense off. And I'm not going to hold you, no disrespect to my dog C. Lu over here, but when I'm just looking through his record, he's only 3-1. Levy's only 5-1, so both these guys barely have fights. But yeah, he's just fighting like the most bot-ass motherfuckers on the Chinese regional scene. Motherfuckers, when I'm looking through their record, I'm like, nah, this does not look UFC caliber. So I don't know. I just do not have no hope in my dog. I think Levy will get this one done by KO and just slime him out pretty bad. I will say, though, when I was looking through Levy's record last time, matching him up with Felipe Franco, I felt like Franco had, nobodies on his record. So I was like, oh, yeah, Levy's about to slime him out. So I'm literally picking the same thing again. Using the same type of, thought process behind my choice. So this could go bad, but I don't know. Just kind of like there's just been a few guys just that come up on that Chinese regional scene, especially at like light heavyweight and heavyweight, where I'm like, nah, I do not know if I trust your record at all. Like the guys you're fighting are suspect. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and lock in with my dog, Levy Rodriguez. And then we're going to have Alex Perez running it back with Sumer Darji. After the last fight, ended in a no contest, which was hella unfortunate. And, Perez ends up getting nut kicked and then he's like throwing up in a bucket and shit, which was crazy. So they, call the fight off, but they decide to run it back since it was so close. I think they really want to get Sumer Darji into those rankings, even though I think the AI gave him some respect and shot him into the rankings. But when I'm looking through both of these guys' games, I feel like they're both strikers. They really just struggle whenever they're fighting submission artists on both sides, especially Perez. Sumer Darji's side, he also, struggles with grapplers and stuff. And then I think Charles Johnson is the only one he's lost to who's, maybe not a primary grappler. And Perez did knock out Johnson earlier this year, so you could do some MMA math there. But I don't know. In the first fight, I felt like Perez was just charging forward with hooks, just trying to land a big one. And, Sumer Darji was looking like prime Adesanya out there, moving back and keeping the range. And, just being masterful with his reaction time. And yeah, I just felt like Sumer Darji was a lot more polished of a striker. His counters looked good. He was looking to counter Perez off of his big meaty hooks when he was charging forward. So it kind of stopped Perez, as much moving forward as the fight was going on. But yeah, in this one, I'm going to go with Sumer Darji decision, I believe. I think they're going to both be, kind of more conservative since they just fought and, the fouls happened and stuff. They're not going to want that to happen again. But yeah, I like Sumer Darji's style on the feet. He moves in and out the pocket nice, good counters. Pretty fast hand. So yeah, I'm going to go Sumer Darji by decision. And then next up, we're going to have Oriki Long taking on Kaya Sakura. And man, in this matchup, I can't hold you. I was trying to look through their records and decide. I feel like Kaya Sakura is one who's so hard to, really gauge how far he'll make it in the UFC just because how his careers went so far. But I like bro a lot. Obviously, he has a lot of power in his hands, hella entertaining style. And, he was a big fan base backing him in Ryzen. And just from Japan and stuff, he was able to captivate a big fan base. So, that could be pretty, advantageous for the UFC to keep wanting to push him. But yeah, when I'm looking at Ricky Long's record, the one big red flag that stood out is my dog got finished by Ayman Zahabi. He got slept in one round, I believe, which is not a good look. I was even rewatching the Cody Haddon fight. That one didn't look as bad. Cody just kind of grinded him down with some grappling and ended up getting the finish with a pretty nasty knee to the body. But yeah, just getting finished by Zahabi, even though I low-key fuck with Zahabi more than the average person. He used to just be an NPC bot for me, but leading up to the White House event, I started getting more of his stuff on my feed. He actually seems like a cool-ass dude for a little humble dude. So yeah, I fuck with Zahabi over here, but just getting slept by bro when he doesn't really sleep anybody is not a good sign for me. And the fact you're taking on Kai Sakura, who just has, that death touch in his hands. Yeah, Kai's power is, especially crazy now that he's at bantamweight. Yeah, this is just one of those ones where I'm just like, something tells me Kai gets this done by KO. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and lock in Kaya Sakura getting this one done by KO, as I see a majority of the community is. And then next up, we're going to have Yan Xiaonan taking on Denise Gomez. And on this fight with Gomez, I know her less than I know Yan. I've been seeing Yan fight at that top level of that division for a good while now. But when it comes to Denise, she's someone where I don't know her as well, but for sure I can kind of remember a little bit about her. Or her recent fights, even though I haven't kept up as much with her, just having that power in the women's division and, the beating she's put on some women, I kind of stays in the back of my mind, I need to look out for her. And yeah, she's finally, reached towards that top #1 contender type of fight. And yeah, she for sure has some powerful hands, some big hooks. Loki reminds me of like a reincarnation of Jessica Andrade, just a powerful Brazilian that's just looking to put your lights out type shit. But when I look at Yan, I am going to MMA math here a little bit, and she did KO Andrade, with just sharp counters in round 1. So, we can kind of look at the stylistic matchup a little bit there. Yan has been there, done that. When I am looking at Yan as well, she usually struggles with grapplers more. Kind of like Verna Jandaroba as a primary grappler, and, was able to beat her. And then Zhang Weili used a lot of grappling in that fight to beat her as well. And like Carla Esparza beat her. So I feel like a lot of those wrestler grapplers are more just looking to get her down more than to just outstrike her whenever she loses. And I will say Yan, she does have decent grappling herself. She kind of was controlling Zhang Weili at times. Now she trains over there with Uriah Faber in them. So they're getting in good rounds. But, it's not her primary thing. But for sure, she's on top of you. She can, work for some submissions and some ground and pound and stuff. But most likely if you're a primary grappler, you're going to be better than her. When I look at Denise, Denise, I don't feel like her striking game is hella evolved. She's only 12-3, so, she's already, about entering her prime, basically. But she could still use, a few higher level fights, know where she stands amongst the rest of the division. And yeah, the only other big thing I'm looking at is that Denise is 26 years old, while Yan is 37. So this could for real either be a Denise slimes her out and, Yan kind of washed at this point. She's been there, done that, and, past her prime. Or this could be a Unc still got it or Auntie still got it type of performance. And Yan ends up, just putting on a striking masterclass on Denise. And yeah, I am going to go ahead and lean Yan in this one. Getting it done by a split decision. I can see her getting cracked at times and maybe getting dropped and, just getting rocked in different moments if Denise is able to land. But I do just think with her height advantage, they got the same reach, that she'll just be able to move away and get away from, the big powerful punches. And probably Denise will start to gas as the fight elongates. And Yang will just cruise to a decision. So yeah, overall, I think Yang Xiaonan will just win a split decision in this fight. And then we're going to have the main event of the evening with Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Song Yadong, which is, a pretty good fight, a good matchup at that bantamweight division. Two of these, kind of younger bantamweights compared to like the Marabs and Piotr Jans and Sugar Shans. These guys are a little younger, but still in their prime and, always come to fight. As we can see, Umar is the heavy favorite with -550. So, a lot of people are not backing Song to win this one. And I do feel like stylistically, he has a decent chance to get it done, but it's just like when you put it into, practicality and really try to see how it would play out, it's hard to see how he exactly gets it done against Umar unless he chins him. But yeah, it does just feel crazy that Song is younger than Umar by 2 years, since it feels like Song's been around for so long and, Umar only really popped up to that top level in the last year or so, maybe 2 years, you could say. So yeah, that is crazy. But yeah, Song, he's really only lost to really good comp, Sugar Sean, Piotr Jan, Corey Sandhagen. So yeah, for the most part, he's losing like champ levels, and he lost to like Kyler Phillips back in the day, who was even a decent prospect back then. So none to worry about too much. But it does just feel like Umar would beat all those people, Sugar, he already beat Sandhagen. Piotr Jan would be an interesting fight, but I don't know. I'd probably lean Umar against most of those people. And then Song, he has looked, I feel like his all-around game has looked the best it ever has. He's barely 28, so he's basically entering his prime. He doesn't seem like somebody who losses really, hold him back or, get him discouraged. He, gets out there and keeps training very well. And yeah, for sure in that performance against Figgy, he just looks so composed, just the best his game had ever been. His striking didn't seem too wild. He was, waiting for his moments and picking his shots. And then on the ground, he was able to submit Figgy, which was pretty nasty the way he locked in that choke so quick, that guillotine. Figgy's own special he did against Figgy. So yeah, that was impressive as hell. Especially when we think about when Umar fought Figgy, he respected Figgy's power way too much. And yeah, when I was rewatching that fight, I just feel like that was by far the worst version of Figgy compared to, like Piotr Jan that fought him and Song Yadong. Yeah, so really just compared to Song Yadong, Umar, and Piotr Jan, I feel like Umar got the worst version of Figgy. He like missed weight and he just looked plotty in that fight and looked like he had no plan. Like they just said, yo, we'll give you a fat paycheck if you pull up, dog. We know you're thinking of pulling out. And yeah, he just did not look good at all. And yeah, for some reason, Umar respected his power. I mean, I guess Figgy knew he didn't have a good training camp and stuff for that fight. So maybe Umar just knew like, okay, Figgy's probably thinking in his mind, all I can do is knock him out. Which is probably what a lot of dudes are like, okay, I can't go band for band with him in the skill department unless my name's Merab Duvalishvili. So I'm going to have to just go for the knockout against Umar. That's going to be my best chance. So maybe that's why he respected Figgy's power, but I don't know. He really could have done a lot more to impress. But yeah, the thing I've started to notice is Umar doesn't have that much pop in his hand. Like compared to all the fighters that he's fought, and he will fight at Bantamweight, I feel like he probably has the least power other than like Corey Sandhagen. Sorry, yeah. I love Corey, but yeah, Corey doesn't have that much pop. Like I remember Umar cracking Merab, and Merab, he didn't even look too rocked, and Merab was able to crack him. So I feel like Merab is above Umar in power, and then Umar's above Corey Sandhagen. But yeah, none of those guys you really think of when you think of power in that division. You're thinking more of Song Yadong, Sean O'Malley, Piotr Jan. But he still has really good striking overall. He's skilled in that department. His kicks are where he really shines. So he doesn't really necessarily need to put guys out. But yeah, those kicks that he throws are really elite. He was throwing good kicks and technically breaking down Figgy. I just felt like he needed to do more in the hands department to really, put that cherry on top and, just be a little more entertaining as well. But dub's a dub. Who really cares? But yeah, I do think that if Umar was able to get Song Yadong's back, he probably could sub him with a rear naked choke, depending on if he's still fresh or tired. Really both sides. But, I do think Song has good jiu-jitsu that it's going to be hard for Umar to try to sub him. I feel like, Song will defend everything well, but if there was to be a submission, I think it would be a rear naked choke. Umar would be able to lock in. So yeah, my final prediction of how I think the fight will go down, something in me tells me that Umar is going to come out and win round one. Probably just throwing a lot of crazy kicks that keep Song backing up and, not wanting to overbite. Maybe landing a few jabs and low kicks himself, Song Yadong. But I think Umar's, high kicks and, just spinning kicks will just keep Song Yadong kind of guessing and, not wanting to overcommit, backing up. So Umar will win round one. And then I think round 2 and 3, Umar's still going to be doing better in the striking. But maybe start trying to mix in some of that grappling to just hold Song down, start working. I think he'll find it hard to keep Song down and to control him. So, mostly just using the grappling to just get control time a little bit. Not necessarily work for anything. I think he's going to have a hard time, trying to, just to advance positions on Song. And I think that will start to get him tired when he's like, oh, crap, I can't dominate this guy. What else should I do? And then, yeah, I think going into round 4 and 5, Umar is going to, start to look fatigue a little bit just with how strong Song is. And I think Song will start building into that fight more in the later rounds. I don't know if that necessarily means he'll win those rounds, but I could see him, edging those out and ends up like a 3-2 or a 4-1 in Umar's favor. But it's one of those where it's like, a lot of those rounds ended up being close, especially I'm assuming like round 3 through 5 will be close. But, overall, Umar does enough to get those done. So, yeah, boys, I am thinking overall this fight is going to end up being a Umar decision win Go ahead and lock that in. But I don't know. Song, he just seems like that guy who you really can't count him out. He'll always have a chance to build back into the fight. But it's just like, I don't know. He's just missing a little bit of something that the other guys have that are able to win them the rounds over him, you know. Especially in the past, I feel like he was just a younger fighter, just kind of trying to go out there and entertain, you know, get into a mean scrap. But low-key with that Figgy performance, he did seem like he's now, you know, a very more matured mixed martial artist. So then again, maybe we could see an evolved version of Song in this fight, but I just don't think that would be enough to beat Umar still. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go Umar decision. But yeah, boys, that's going to be all my thoughts for this fight night. Shanghai Umar Nurmagomedov versus Song Yadong. Some pretty decent fights overall. Some ones I'm not going to be mad to sit down. We got upcoming prospects like Bilal, Hasan, who's going to be fighting on there. Kaya Sakura looking to, you know, get some respect back on his name slowly. Ray Saruya on the come up as well. So, you know, some decent guys. Even a crafty Jack Jenkins in there. So, yeah, we got some decent fighters. I think we'll be in for a good night just to sit down, hop on some live streams, some watch-alongs with any of your favorite, you know, YouTubers and stuff, content creators who do any of that kind of stuff. I think we'll for sure be, you know, just a good card to watch. I'm just now remembering it's going to be hella early in the morning, so might just have to wake up and see what happened, possibly. But, you know, sometimes that's just kind of fun to just wake up and just see what the results ended up being and watching them back. But, yeah, I appreciate you boys watching this video for me. And, yeah, just taking the time out of your day to watch my content. Don't forget to drop me a little like, leave a little comment with any thoughts you had, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content I'm going to be posting. And I'm going to see you boys soon. Peace.